Leigh Bursey. How you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you very much for having me.
You're most certainly welcome, man. So, my first question was if you guys could introduce yourselves, but it's just you. So if you could introduce yourself and tell us how Project Mantra started.
Oh, gee, it started as a high school band. It's gone through a million variations. I'm the only original member. There's myself. There's Mike Paquin, who he raps, he plays bass, he plays guitar on the new record. He's a very versatile young man. He's a hip-hop artist, as just Mike as well. Performs all over southeastern Ontario. Then there's we've got a gentleman named Darren Martin, who is our guitarist guru. He's a multi-instrumentalist and recording engineer. And then there is a new fellow as part of the band. Odell is the man. I have to say, I really am enjoying him. And I think that he is bringing a lot as our drummer.
You know, that sounds like a great lineup. You know, Project Mantra's been through a lot of trials and tribulations, but you guys are still going strong. The name Project Mantra, how did you guys get that name for the band?
Oh, I wish I could give you a real good story about how Project Mantra came to be known as the band title. I think that I was going through an album collection in the early 2000s, trying to come up with a title for a group that I thought sounded unique and interesting. I remember the Tea Party had a album now called the Inner Zone Mantras, and I looked up the definition of the term and tried to understand and extrapolate how it could be meaningful to the content and the stories I'm telling, and quite frankly, it just stuck. Mantra, the Mantra, Project Mantra, and the way it evolved, it became kind of a collective-based group with me as the center focus. We definitely experimented with a lot of different musical styles. We've done everything from incredibly aggressive, heavier music, a lot of punk-influenced music. There's definitely been some stripped-down folk and keyboard-based material. There's been power ballads. There's been no variety. It's been pretty outstanding that way. But I know there's definitely hip-hop influence these days. But the idea is that there's a lot of subject matter in the songs that generally are very self-deprecating. They talk a lot about coming of age. They talk about depression. They talk about socioeconomic challenges. And I think that's kind of the mantra that sticks with the group, is understanding that as a project, you can use music as a universal tool to sort of inspire social conversations and changes and make different levels of civic investment. So I would think that's how the band name has sort of evolved into the entire story.
And I do have to ask this one. Out of the original lineup, as you said, it's been through a lot of... Project Mantra's been through a lot of different changes throughout the years. But how did Project Mantra originally form with the original members? How did you guys first get together? And
quite frankly, I had no idea how to sing. I had no idea how to play an instrument. I knew how to tell stories. So I stretched my vocal range as best I could, learned on the job. I started learning to play guitar when my guitarist was unable to show up, in many cases to save face. And that's the best way. High school bands, they're like that many times, and people have to make a lot of noise and make a lot of mess before they get anywhere that sounds like a compromise and sounds like an artistic success. But I think that initially it was more just that I was eager to start performing alongside some of my colleagues. I tried out for bands and helped kickstart projects that had not been so successful and that would go on to become much more successful without me. And no doubt, as a angst-filled, bitter teenage punk rocker, I wanted to go out and make my own mark. So I just started doing it myself. And that's very much been how this group has been, is the do-it-yourself project. People bring to it what they wish. And many times have been very flexible when it comes to their styles, their interests, their investment of time. It's often meant that I've fallen on hard times and been doing a lot of it myself at different points as well. But in all intents and purposes, it's forced my evolution as a singer-songwriter and a storyteller. And at this point, I've never felt more confident. But in terms of how it started like every great band does, in someone's basement or garage, making incredibly shitty music.
Well, you know what? You guys have grown a lot. I had the pleasure of seeing you guys live quite a few times because you're in the same city as me. And, I had the pleasure of seeing you guys around this time when you first started to now. And it's the way you guys have formed and evolutioned is just insane. You guys are most definitely, later on in the interview, I'm going to be bringing up you guys are going to be performing in Crazy Town, which is a great one, most definitely for the Project Mantra history books. But you also have a new album coming out called Fairy Tales for Firestarters. What is the story behind that album? I have to ask that.
Sure. So this will be our third release. The first release was called Fusion Manifesto, which is, I guess, an accidental nod to hybrid theory, because it's more or less the same analogy, but it's the idea of the different clashing of styles and sounds and stories at a unique time. That was a live, grungy, low to no-fi record at different points. Recorded part drunk for a lot of it at Zaphod Beeblebrox, which was my favorite bar, which has now been renamed and sort of reignited in Ottawa. But it was a definitely unique time in my life, struggling with addiction, depression, circumstances, heartbreak, like a lot of great storytellers tend to, and we sort of combined hip hop beats with a very much acoustic guitar pluck type sound, and sort of made something that I thought was unlike anything else at that time. The second album I'm incredibly proud of is called Moonlight Over Vagabond, and it's actually a full concept record from track 1 to 8. It's a full story about someone who loses themselves and forgets all the things that brought them to this unique destination of who they are and what they wanted to accomplish, and then their passions reignited in a moment of lust and anger and punk rock sentimentality, and then they go through this entire reprogramming and restructuring of all those things that make them, that inspire them and make them special, and only to realize at the end of the story that they still have to grow up and live within the society that they're in, and still have to continue to overcome those struggles, and they can't just go out and be bombastic and outlandish without expecting the consequences of adulthood as well. And I think I'm very proud of that record. This particular album is a 5-song EP. It's not a full length, but the last 2 were. It's all original material, and to be honest, a lot of it was leftover songs. Great material that, for whatever reason, didn't fit in previous releases that we were doing, but we believed did have a home. There was strength to the songs. There was definitely some emotional appeal to some of the pieces, and they were just, it's the worst feeling to see great material left on the cutting room floor. And I know that, some of your favorite hip-hop artists are great examples of this. It's how many releases has Tupac put out since his death, with songs that, at that time, who knows how he would have felt about them, but, no doubt you're grateful they exist, because there's been some great gems that get discovered in the process. Sometimes it takes new musicians and a new artistic outlook and a new engineer. And I think for Mike and I, being the 2 members who were in the last album, and now, of course, 2 members in this album with 2 new people, Morgan, our drummer, brought something different to it. Darren has been outstanding in bringing something different to it. So there's at least a couple of tracks that were, I guess, that were kind of written somewhat in studio based on unique circumstances that we're all going through, continuations of previous stories and analogies and ideas, certain themes that you want to have to be effervescent and constantly omnipresent in your storytelling. But there's also just a few of them that were just really great lyrics from previous bands, or I have a verse and he had a verse, but we had no song, so why would I have this song? And then we tried that Blink-182 mantra of, you've got the 2 musicians go into the, they write the music and they go into a room and they come back with 2 verses, and no one knows what the other verse is until you play it together and see how it sounds. And it was more, let's make a campfire acoustic transitional record for a group that was in transition. Initially, Mike and I weren't expecting to have a full, robust lineup of musicians to play with and make this really significant piece of art. It was more just that we wanted to make sure that this album was those songs that we did not want to lose in the process of finding ourselves. And as it turned out, when Morgan was able to join our lineup as we began to record, he added a brand new dynamic as a brand new, fresh-faced musician. And Darren, being our recording engineer, was ecstatic to participate and really brought a lot of these very simple, shelled songs to life. And the idea of Fairy Tales for Firestarters is that there's a lot of storytelling in our music. There's also this acoustic folk punk, folk rap element to some of the pieces we do. They're definitely many times alcohol infused and energetic and emergetic, but they're simple, and they're things that you could see people with a beer bottle around a campfire singing these types of songs and trying to do something significant with them. And it just made sense to me that we would put it all together and give something that's, in my opinion, very different than anything we'd released before.
And you know what? It sounds like Fairy Tales for Firestarters is going to be one hell of a great album. I have to ask this: are you guys going to be doing any hard copies for the local community to be able to buy copies of? And also, when you guys do put it out, where on the digital stores can we get it? And what is the initial release date, so people that are listening to this can grab a copy? getting tongue.
Well, I think we're going to have a couple of advanced hard copies this weekend. But in all intents and purposes, we'll make sure that your show is kept posted of the official release dates. But I know that there will be many hard copies because I'm still a big believer in collecting music, and the artwork, the tangible element in my hand is something I still very much value. It's like the classic do-it-yourself punk rocker. But I also know that we're going to have 10%. Right. I know that we're going to have the SoundCloud piece that, we already have songs up on our SoundCloud, and we'll make sure that they're on all of the different, streaming services and algorithms that we can get them onto, because we're very proud of the material. In terms of a release date, expected sometime soon, definitely before Christmas. We hope to have hard copies in hand.
And also, Leigh, as me and you both know, you're a huge member of the community here in Brockville, Ontario. Does Project Mantra have any local shows coming up within the Brockville and surrounding area?
Oh, for sure. We've got a number of them that are in the works in terms of what's been announced at this point. You did make a mention of a program that we're playing on Saturday at Mavericks in Ottawa. Mavericks Bar is on Rideau Street. It's below Café de Cuff and just across the street from the Bourbon Room, right there on the main strip of Rideau. We're sharing the stage with a beautiful artist who's incredibly talented named Alana Sterling, along with a number of other acts that I'd be honest, I'm not as familiar with, but so far I've heard are tremendous. And Crazy Town. And Crazy Town's an act that I never thought I would be sharing the stage with, and I know that it probably is a unique mix of what I like about music and what you are, probably more known for and liking about music. Is definitely hip-hop infused, but it's hard to believe that it was 20 years ago that album came out, and they have 96 million views on their biggest single of all time. So being able to share a stage with anyone from that magnitude, whether they're at the tail end of their career or the beginning of the threshold, who knows? It's a great opportunity. And anyway, long story short, I'm excited about that opportunity. We have advanced tickets for sale to $25. Diamond Mine Industry and Brandon Bird have been spectacular to us and got us on stage with acts such as Bill Scarlett. They've got us on stage with Mad Child in the past, Spencer Rice from Kenny vs. Spenny, and a variety of other acts. And that I've always very much enjoyed working with Brandon and his team and all of the co-promoters that work alongside him. He's a very talented guy and a really honest guy who really wants to make the biggest impact. And I know he's got a lot of other great acts and such that he's working with across the province. I know he's got an event, I believe, in Barrie with Yellow Wolf later this month. He's one of those guys who is a go-getter and done some great things. Other than that, I know that there's an event called One Cold Night that's coming up in the middle of November. I believe it's November 16th in Brockville. Rain or shine, we're going to be playing in front of the Tunnel Plaza of the Brockville Train Tunnel. It's an event about local homelessness and how to have a positive impact in raising some much-needed funds and awareness for some very serious causes. Or organizations like Cornerstone Landing out of Lanark, the Brockville Public Library, Interval House of Leeds Grenville, and the Pathways to Prosperity Student Grant are all organizations that help people who are impoverished and destitute and in serious need of precariousness. And understanding all of that, we're just not only collecting pledges and having people sleep outside, rain or shine, which I think is really spectacular that we've gotten so much interest so far. Sam Crosby, a local teacher, and myself have been spearheading this. This is an event that is seen across the province by different agencies in different forms. But for us, it's the beginning. It's a kickstart of something, and we're going to have some live music there, and it's a free show. We want everyone to come on down and say hi.
That's pretty awesome. When you mentioned Sam Crosby, that's actually my old dance teacher as well. It's good to see she's still doing a lot of great things for the community.
She's one of the best human beings I've ever met, and I want to make sure everyone knows Sam Crosby is the coolest.
I also have to ask this. This is one of the last questions I have for you. But I asked a lot of the people that a lot of people don't really know of. I asked this because it might stump you, so it's okay if you have to take a couple extra minutes. But if you could perform anywhere in the world, just pack up and go, where would it be and why?
Oh, that's a great question. It won't stop me because there's a lot of places for starters. Definitely understanding how folk music has been, folk music is an interesting one because a lot of people, they listen to folk music and they go, oh, it's old, it's dated, it doesn't have that same feel. But I think of so many of my favorite punk bands growing up were folk punk bands. They were Irish infused, like the Flogging Mollies and the Dropkick Murphys. I look at bands like Mumford & Sons and the Lumineers who make meaningful songs from a very different nostalgic background. Some of the great Americana bands of all time, like The Band and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Neil Young. These are all artists that have some level of a folk influence. I love the rural Alberta advantage from Toronto. I would love to go and visit a place like Ireland to be immersed in that type of feel, because I know that groups like Spirit of the West, who wrote that song, Home to Rest, which is one of the great Canadian rock and roll songs of all time, that's a place that they would go to sort of, kickstart that inspiration. Other than that, I would love to visit places that make me uncomfortable. I'd love to go to places like Russia, where they're not so kind to the LGBTQ community, as an example, and sing songs about social justice, because a lot of great artists have come out of that neck of the woods who stand up against austerity, stand up against patriarchy, and stand up against a lot of the heteronormativity that seems to permeate in our culture and rise to the surface. I'd love to go to Germany, where that has a rich culture of, a cultural tapestry that's spectacular, and so much that you could pull from it on a positive as well as on a negative note, and understanding that history can help inspire so much of the beautiful songs. I think of, David Bowie singing, Heroes, and singing about the Berlin Wall in that song, and that song went on to be the Tunnel Song and The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Like, it's one of those universal songs that it evokes emotion out of people. I'd love to go and visit those places, because I feel those places bring something special. But for me, I think, I listen to Sandinista and Combat Rock by The Clash, two of probably my favorite records, and they were both recorded, either in or around places like Vietnam, Cambodia, Afghanistan, some of the places that are war-torn nations that were going through civil uprising, and some of the conversations that those albums, they brought to the forefront. And this is what I think is interesting about your show, is you have a lot of great hip-hop artists. Hip-hop and punk rock have a definitive link. They're both, very much in their onset, they're protests. Both of them were, punk rockers were always known for not being the best singers, and therefore many people would discredit them or disregard their talent because it didn't sound like commercially viable music. Hip-hop was deep poetry that came from, a moment in time when oppression was much more visible, and you had Black Panther movements, and you had a variety of racial injustices that were very prevalent in modern America, and they came from these different elements of folk and soul and bluegrass and all these pieces that sort of came into literary focus and standing up in protest. And I think that any time I could go to a place like Harlem, where, Grandmaster Flash was making a record, or if I can go to a place like London where The Clash was making London Calling, I think that sounds amazing. So quite frankly, Brendan, I'll play anywhere. I'll play your living room. I just want all the experiences I can get.
And you know what, that's actually a great answer, especially when you brought up, Germany and Ireland. I think those would be two great places to actually go, just for the sights, let alone even playing there. That'd be sick. So other than, you said Crazy Town's coming up in a couple days. Also, the homeless prevention concert down by the tunnel here in Brockville. Other than that, what is next for Project Mantra?
Well, it's a great question. The fact is the group is evolving in terms of its lineup. The album's about to come out. It's a 5-song EP. I'm proud of those songs. I want to make sure the world hears them. I think we're going to be probably everywhere and taking advantage of a lot of opportunities over the next little while. I know we have a show coming up at the Avant-Garde near the end of November, and then I believe we have another one coming up, I believe possibly Café de Cuff in December. We're getting involved. Ottawa is definitely a prime market for us, but we're not tied to Ottawa. We'll happily go anywhere. And as a solo musician, as well as with the group, we've, I've been playing Project Mantra songs in everywhere from Cardinal, Ontario, to Cornwall, to Bowmanville, to anywhere that'll have me this past summer. Playing a sold-out show at the Grad Club in Kingston talking about mental health. Big thing for me is I'm a social justice warrior who is very honest about being imperfect. I've made some really poor decisions in my day. I've definitely struggled with alcoholism, struggled severely with my depression and self-care. And I think a lot of that is probably somewhat systemic from my family upbringing and my chemical makeup and genetics, sure. But some of it is also just that I look at the world from a lens that it can be very difficult for the modern man in today's society who is has to adjust to his privilege. I have to understand how you make people uncomfortable sometimes, or that you have rights and abilities that other people don't, and how You have to be aware in an era of Me Too and Black Lives Matters that some of the things that we've been growing up and been taught as normal are actually incredibly vile, and they're catastrophic for some people, and they pigeonhole people and stick them in areas that they don't belong. The fact is that being analytical and being emotionally intelligent are great things, but it also doesn't change the fact that it makes heavy is the head that wears the crown. I struggle with my own morality and my own mortality regularly. I struggle with the things that have happened in my life, and I also struggle with sometimes loneliness, and loneliness is an incredible songwriting tool. Being vulnerable is a very difficult place to be. When you're talking about being a suicide attempt survivor, and you're talking about the different things that, you know, make you ugly in the world, and the things that you regret, and the people that you hurt, and understanding that a lot of the people who turn to me for help are vulnerable people. Many times they turn to me because they trust me, and I do my best to do good by them. But sometimes desperation can lead to really unfortunate circumstances, and you know, all of this becomes a songwriting tool. It all becomes a part of the story that we tell, which is that there are beautiful people in the world who come from incredibly bad places who do incredibly bad things, and there are bad people in the world who exploit good people. And there's stories to be told about coming of age and understanding that you can bring a punk rock mentality of do it yourself and standing up against social injustice, while also being aware of your own shortcomings and your own bullshit, and that sometimes you got to fucking grow up along the way too. And I think that in terms of where Project Mantra goes, it is intrinsically tied to me as an activist, intrinsically tied to me and my mental health and my physical health and my storytelling and the issues that matter to me. And I'm grateful that I'm surrounded by musicians and colleagues and friends and supporters who believe in all of those things and forgive me for my trespasses and my shortcomings. But in terms of where it goes from here, it's a matter of, can the things I want to bring to the forefront resonate with an audience that makes this both financially and commercially acceptable and viable, while also being therapeutic and positive. And I don't have an answer to that question, except that I'm going to try, and I'm going to strum my guitar till my fingers bleed, until all my strings break, and I'll give you everything I've got every chance I get.
You know, and that's one of the best answers I've ever actually heard. You know, just keep doing it, man. Project Mantra and yourself, you guys are a very great band. You're a very talented guy. You're a very big community member. You do a lot for the community. So this is the time.
The community does a lot for me too, man. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to make this opportunity and say the community does a lot for me too. I get a lot of undue respect and a lot of undue thanks for standing up for some of the things that I do, when quite frankly, it's impossible not to when you're surrounded by such inspiring people who don't have your podium. Now, I look at you, Brandon, and I think to myself, you know, you and I have had many differences of opinions over the years, but I'll tell you one thing. You're the one interviewing me on your platform, your show. So as nice as it is that you can lift me up for being a good guy and doing good things in the community, you're currently providing me an opportunity to do so, and you shouldn't sell yourself short in the process. I'm proud of you too.
I appreciate that, man. You know, that's why I created that kind of the sister station, Outlaw Radio Exclusive, to give people like yourselves a voice, you know, because I realize it's just not hip-hop musicians that are trying to get their voice heard. It's everybody, you know, politicians, musicians of all genres, athletes, and that's where I want to come in and help everybody get their voice heard. So I have to ask, this is the time in the interview where I ask the people, no, this is the time they can give shout-outs to whoever they want to give shout-outs to, and also their social media handles, just that way people that are hearing this can actually go and follow you on all social media platforms.
Sure. So for starters, our Facebook page is where you're going to find most things. It's going to be updated a lot more than it has been, just because there was a time there. We had an election last year. You know, there's definitely been some rejigs in our lineup. It's been quiet on the social media front, but we still get tagged in a lot of things and such. But a lot of good things are starting to happen. So no doubt our Facebook page is where people connect to us simplest. If you were to look us up on SoundCloud, it'd be Project Mantra. Facebook is Project Mantra. On Instagram, it's Project Mantra. On Twitter, it's PRJ Mantra, M-A-N-T-R-A. So you know, keep in touch. But you know, you can also follow me, which is on Instagram, it's at Bursey Leigh. On Twitter, it's at Leigh Bursey, Leigh Zachary Bursey on Facebook. I love to talk to people and learn from people. I love to create relationships with people, and I'm always grateful for those opportunities. And again, it's intrinsic, because there are times where it's Leigh Bursey and Project Mantra, where I'm playing Project Mantra songs solo, but there's still songs that are very near and dear to my heart and huge parts of my life. But there's also other times where it's not, and it's the full group. But they complement each other well. And you know, no doubt, I don't want it to be that it's not the singer, it's the song, because that's absolutely the case. But I'm one and the same in many respects, and blatantly and painfully who I am more often than not. So I would definitely encourage people to keep in touch that way. But in terms of who I would send shout-outs to, Jesus, there's no shortage. Let's see if I can try, though. Brandon Bird has been great to us. Time and Mind in this agency has been outstanding. Please follow them on all their social media. They bring a lot of great events, not just in the capital region, but across Canada, quite frankly. I've worked with Tyrone from, not Tyrone, I'm trying to think here, a couple of members of the Trailer Park Boys we've been on stage with, thanks to people like him. Spencer Rice from Kenny vs. Benny, Mad Child, who's a 5-time Juno Award winner, hip-hop artist from the solo members. Artists that have, some serious namesake, or at least enough recognizability that an audience that wouldn't otherwise see us is right there in front of us. They've got them to play in shows in Barrymore's. I can't thank people enough for that. Other than that, there's been a lot of great bands that we've got to share the stage with over the years. Sparklesaurus, I think, are currently just taking a hiatus. Still encourage you to go and check out their music. Alex Hodges is a former member of the group who was a huge part of writing some of the best material we've ever produced, including one of my favorites, which is called Words I Wrote on a Napkin that I used to clean up the mess I made before you came along. One of our signature songs. He was a huge piece of that. And, he's a big contributor to a lot of the music that came up to this point, even though he doesn't play with us now. His group, T-Rex Marathon, is worth all their weight in gold as human beings on top of as musicians. I know Danica Villeneuve used to do my makeup, and she's a beautiful girl who's, been an incredible supporter and tremendous inspiration in many respects. She does makeup and does modeling now in Ottawa and deserves her shout-outs for that. But if I was to go continue there with the Ottawa music scene, I love bands like Nebraska, who just friggin' kill it. I love bands like the Homeless Gospel Choir out of Pittsburgh, who we got to share the stage with, who are the only group I've played with in a long time who I can say truly inspired me. He's a killer friggin' songwriter. Huge shout out to Tucker Rule, who's the drummer for Thursday, among many other pursuits. Never got to share the stage with him, but he gave me some great words of advice and words of wisdom, and has been definitely pulling for me a lot. CBC Radio, who's featured us, CKWS, Global. I've got the pretty cool record show in Cornwall. I keep going, and I even go down to JRFM in Brockville, and some of the fine folks who we've been featured with through a variety of different public relations pieces. The Ottawa Sun, the Ottawa Citizen, who did some really spectacular articles on me. Willie Stevenson and the DIFA Foundation, who featured us on the last big festival they hosted, and it got us some great local coverage. I think that we've had some pretty great tattoo artists who've collaborated with us from the Cornwall and Brockville area over the years. And on top of that, I've also had people like John McDougall and Brandon Mead who have gotten my lyrics tattooed on their body. And that's something that I'm still not used to, even though we're close friends. John McDougall has seen Project Mantra in a variety of forms play a few hundred times. Matt Vanderbilt, Matt Third Eye, the Third Eye Photography. He is a huge piece of the digital artwork we've had up until this point. He wrote a phenomenal book on Abandoned Asylums, which is this incredible photography book that I would encourage everyone to go out and spend their hard-earned money and support him, because he's a tremendous, tremendous artist and one-of-a-kind human being. I think that I think of the people who've gotten me home when I probably needed some support, the different people who were there for me when I was crying my eyes out, the different people who broke my heart and inspired some of the best material I've ever written in my life. I think of my closest circle of friends. I've got, I'm in a vehicle right now with Mark and Judith Dara, people who I spent a lot of time with, Quentin Howes, Charla Robertson, who's not only one of the loves of my life, but one of the best people I've ever met. People who've seen my band play a bazillion times and supported me a million times. Andy Gray and Jessica Burton from the bar in Brockville, really, really good people who were incredibly supportive to me when, quite frankly, my band probably wasn't so goddamn good to listen to, but always look for the best. Audrey Calhoun, one of the best musicians I've ever worked with. Justin Stacy, who is the longest tenured drummer we've ever had and will always be my brother. I've got people who bought multitudes of records to support me, from the Gotham Mukherjees of the world, who are just really good friends, and or Darren Johnston, who I think bought 7 or 8 copies to give away to other people just to help. No doubt anyone who still listens to original music, who goes out and purchases someone's hard copy of a record and spends their hard-earned money with the intention of supporting someone so that they can get home safely, buy themselves a refreshment, and have food in their stomach. I'm thankful for all of them. Steve Hamilton, one of the great musicians I've ever played with, he's definitely had a unique couple of years, but is a tremendous musician, and I'm really grateful for the time I got to spend with him, because he taught me how to be better. Derek Atkinson, who was the first activist I ever met, who really inspired a lot of the music that we ended up playing and I've shared the stage with multiple times. David Dargys of the world, a lot of those incredible, inspiring people. In terms of musicians that I've never had the chance to meet, but that I look up to, no doubt Lori Jane Grayson Against Me, to this day, have to be one of the coolest bands I've ever seen a million times. And, I wear that sweater every day of my life like a uniform, and I have her words tattooed on my body. And she's tough and punk as fuck and deserves all of her respect. On top of that, there's the great ones out there like The Clash, and there's the great ones like the Jay-Z's, and there's the great ones like the July Talks and Canadian artists, Rural Alberta Advantage, as I mentioned before. All of these people have had some level of inspiration in the stories I tell, including like some of the lost stories out there. Bands from the 90s like Not a Surf, or current bands like Me Without You that tell these stories in a very unique way. Tom Waits, if anyone doesn't know Tom Waits, and they love jazz, they love folk, they love crooner, they love obnoxious, weird carnival music that's just eclectic, dark, not listener friendly. That's your guy, because he does everything. Pixies, I don't think that I'd exist today without the Pixies and the Smashing Pumpkins and Radiohead. They are no doubt the bands that have had probably the most indelible impact of my life. And even though I don't listen to them anymore, I can honestly say that Our Lady Peace was probably the soundtrack of my homeless tenure of my life. And therefore, every time I hear them, I can't help but get nostalgic. All the people who were ever kind and bought me a meal or bought me a drink or listened to me ramble on like you are right now. And all of the people who hated my band so much and told me that I was fucking shit and inspired me to go get better. I hope you enjoy my new record. Feel free to buy them all. I don't care if you burn them. There you go.
The main thing is people are buying them, you know what I mean? If they burn them, fuck them. You're still getting you're still getting sales. So I have to say, Leigh, thank you so much, man, for coming up on Outlaw Radio Exclusive. Whenever you need an interview, you hit me up, man. I have no problem helping you out, man. I greatly appreciate you coming on. And thank you so much. You have yourself a wonderful day. Try to stay dry. Happy Halloween, by the way.
Thanks, brother. So I understand you're about to play some Fresh World exclusives here, right?
Oh, hell yeah. You already know.
Okay, cool. So I should give a quick plug to those because you're about to hear. Are you playing all three of them?
I'm going to be playing Chemical Burn. Right at that, yeah. Right.
Chemical Burn. Okay, cool. So Chemical Burn is a brand new track. I give Mike Packwin the credit on writing, obviously, the main vocal part. He's the hip-hop voice you're hearing, and he's also the main guitar player. But that said, the entire band collaborated. Darren, Morgan, they were all a huge piece of it. But I get to do this really fun, very self-deprecating lyrical piece that I think is incredibly moving and I really like. So it's definitely a departure for us, and I think it's really cool. This is the world exclusive of a brand new song off of our brand new record. And you know what? You spent a lot of time thanking me. Quite frankly, thank you for providing the platform. I hope people listen to your podcast regularly. I'm inspired by the artists that you get in there, and I am such a huge fan of anyone who had the courage to go chase their dreams. So, fucking give them hell, kid.
Thank you very much, brother. And most definitely, whenever this is up live, you know I'm going to send you a copy.
Awesome. Sounds good, brother.
Sounds
Happy
good.
Halloween.
Have a wonderful day. Happy Halloween, brother.
Cheers, guys.
Without further ado, here is Project Mantra's brand new single, Chemical Burn, right here, right now, for OLR exclusive. Enjoy!
Cupid must have got the wrong fucker when he shot this lover for you. You're stupid if you can't realize what's standing right in front of you. Cause I'm the motherfucking man, and from where I stand, I'm stronger than I can you wait. Cause I'm the motherfucking man, and if you don't understand, I better off walking away. Cupid must have got the wrong fucker when he shot this lover for you. You're stupid if you can't realize what's standing right in front of you. Cause I'm the motherfucking man, and from where I stand, I'm stronger than I can you wait. Cause I'm the motherfucking man, and if you don't understand, I'm better off walking away. In my mind's eye, I can see your face. The way you cried, the way you tried, the way you spoke my name hurts me deep inside to look back on it now. But I'm fed up, keep my head up and stuck in the clouds. You heard me once, heard me twice, maybe. And I just let it go like I'm frozen when you call me baby. I think it's crazy, the way I put up with shit. I love you, lady, but I'm way better than this. So I'm moving on, growing strong and I can on my own. Hoping I'm the helpless kind, I can see through, I don't need you. There's no reason to believe you. A poison tip, a wound that bleeds when I see you. It's just my luck to get my heart torn up. I have my issues, but I'm missing cause I'm not broken in love. And even with the distance of a world's apart, I'll still feel as if I love you with all of my heart. Cupid must have got the wrong fucker when he shot this lover for you. Stupid if you can't realize what's standing right in front of you. Cause I'm the motherfucking man from where I stand. I'm strong and not getting away. Cause I'm the motherfucking man. If you don't understand, I better run walking away.
And watch it burn, I wanna scrub myself clean of you. And watch it burn, and all of those lies that you put me through. Like a chemical burn, maybe it's my turn. Maybe it's time to douse myself in gasoline. And watch it burn.
It's off the ground, way up in the air. I thought I saw you yesterday. Atmosphere, now it's clear, like I'm looking through glass. I can't be here, I'm just repeating my past. I'm coming last, time and time again. Now I'm just a wreck as my life spins. Come on, party people, now drop the noise. Short-term distractions for these girls and boys. I'm nuts, I'm fucked, I've suffered so much. What happened, we all just a little bit. I can speak all I need until I'm weak. And still all I can say is, I am me. I'm ugly, I must be a nothing. Trust me, attitude's just a little bit crusty. Bleeding love, you cut me open, and still I want you to motherfucking love me. Cause
I wanna scrub myself clean of you. And all of those lies that you put me through. A chemical burn, maybe it's my turn. Oh, maybe it's time to douse myself in gasoline and watch it burn. And watch it burn. And watch it burn, 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 and watch it burn.